So first up, we're going to have the welcome and overview and a brief history of the Peacock Track by Mr. Desmond Wilson, the Director of Economic and Community Development of the City of Montgomery. Can we give him a round of applause?
Whew. I'd like to welcome you all for coming out. I don't think anybody is elated about this particular day than I am. This has been a long time coming. I think we've been working on something or in this area for about 12 years. I think we started actually about in 2007, trying to accumulate all of this land to revitalize this community. So if I seem a little giddy, it's because this is one of the greatest days of my life. And it's more like a homecoming for me because I grew up right across the street right there. And I was in this community, before the interstate. I was in this community growing up as a child during the civil rights movement. I was actually sitting in my mother's lap as the civil rights movement came right down this street up to Mobile on the last leg to the state capitol. So, the history of this community has been ingrained and drilled in my head. I wish my parents were alive today to see this moment because we moved away from here, I think, in 1973 to Ridgecrest, and right during the start of the deterioration of the community. But because of what happened in this community, my mother was alive today. She said, the reason you got that job downtown the city of Montgomery because we marched along that trail and we did all this and she's right. And I appreciate all that. And it's rare to get an opportunity in life to come back to where your principles of your life were ingrained in you in this community. This community was a village. There's some people here today that grew up with me in this community, and there wasn't a house on this block on the street that I could not run to if I was in trouble. If I was hungry, there was somewhere I can go to. If I needed to be disciplined, there was somewhere I would run from. And at that time, some of the folks were young enough to run behind me and catch me and give me a whooping, and then go and tell my mom what I had did, then I would get another whipping. So, but it's a community that engraved me and has played a large part of who I am today. But this project is special, and I will say this is not the first project that we have in this area. The first project that we kicked off is actually the Mount Zion project. And I'll tell a little bit about the history. There are some people here that can tell the history a little bit better, but I'll try to do you all some justice. This project is really something that I have dreamed about all my life, and it's kind of built off the fabric of this community. When you talk about agriculture and farming, every house, every lot on this particular street, particular Grady Street, and even Stone Street, everybody had a garden. That was our way of life. That's how we lived. That's how we survived, and we ate better during those days. So, plus my mom and dad didn't have enough money to go buy me potato chips and Pop-Tarts and all that other stuff that our kids get today. But so I grew up eating black-eyed peas and cornbread and all those good things. But being with that, it brought all the neighbors together because we all shared in what we grew. One house may grow collard greens, one may grow turnip greens, one grew strawberry, some grew sugar canes, we had fruit trees. So everybody shared in everything that we have here. So that's where my love for agriculture and farming came from. I didn't like the fact that I had to go dig the garden up with the shovel, but definitely enjoyed the fruits of the labor. And so that's why this project between the city of Montgomery and Tuskegee is very special. And I'm just elated that they chose this site to do this. And I want to thank my staff before I go get a little bit farther, in that there's a lot of moving parts behind the scene that make a project like this work. It just doesn't come out of the air, especially when you're dealing with federal funding and trying to negotiate, sites and, their environmental review processes, their land acquisition process. So there's a lot, and I just want to thank my team, which I call my dream team, that has put up with me for the last 12 years when I envisioned this project, to kind of just wave their hand my team from the Community Development Division. Y'all just raise your hand. And then also my team from the Development Department. They kind of brought the last leg of this project home. And also have our Planning and Zoning Department, which is at another meeting today that kind of made all this possible to be able to legally actually do this on this property. So there's a lot of pieces that goes in trying to put a project like this together, and it often takes a long time. But I've been telling people for a long time, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, and it's finally here. So I don't have that burden on me anymore. So I'm trying to kill time till the mayor get here. He's running just a little bit behind, so I'm full of energy, I'm full of excitement, and I'm just gonna tell you a little bit about the history. And I'll be honest with you, if I were to tell the whole history of this community, the Peacock Tract, you guys will be here till tomorrow morning, because this is one of the most historic communities in the city of Montgomery. And I'm a little bit ashamed to say about living here that I didn't know a lot of these things until I actually started working on this project and researching some of the things that happen here. But there's a reason why the name Peacock Tract, and I didn't know it was called Peacock Tract. It was just home. It was just where I lived at. But I didn't find out until we started actually looking at the plats and looking at, trying to purchase the property and looking at some of the history of the property that it was called the Peacock Tract. And it's so much history. Please forgive me about me reading, because I just didn't want to miss something, but I do kind of outline a lot of the important points. But where you're standing is just part of the historic Peacock Tract. And the Peacock Tract, and taking it back to the early 1800s, was part of a 100-acre plantation that actually had black slaves on it. It was owned by a gentleman named Michael Peacock. And depending on what you read about him, some said, some of the stories say that he was white. Some of the stories say that he was mulatto. So it just depends on who you read about. But at some point in the mid-1800s, a survey was conducted, I believe in 1864. And the name of the survey was Plan for the Peacock Land. And this is the plan that actually laid out the heart of what we know as West Montgomery. The official boundaries of the Peacock Tract, if you look to the east, it's the original name, or the boundary line would be east Plank Road, which is at one point was called Cleveland Avenue, and now it's called Rosa Parks Avenue. If you look to the south, the boundary was called Lee Street, which is now known as Early Street. To the west, looking as far as you can, it would be the Washington Park communities and the Western Hills communities. Looking to the north, the boundaries would be right here at Day Street. So it was a sizable tract of land, communities. And I'm going to touch a little bit on the historic events and people that were in this community. And I'm kind of blown away at some of the things that happened here. And I hope one day at some point we'll try to sit down and collect all this history. And there's a lady that's here today who I know at some point we're going to interview, because she kind of told me some things that I didn't know about the area. And we want to make sure we capture all the story. But I'm just going to read down a list of different things that happened here. Like, for example, this area is also known, for the trolley car system, and actually two eras of the trolley car system. There are maps that are in existence that shows tracks that are actually going up Holt Street and actually going up Grady Street here. And these were trolley cars that were actually being pulled by mules. Later on in the process, or in this history of the trolley car system, Montgomery is arguably, depends on who you believe and what you read. The story is that France, Paris, France was claimed that they were the first to have an electric trolley car system in the world, and Montgomery was the second city in the world to actually have electric trolley cars. those trolley cars also ran up Hope Street. They ran down back here on Stone Street and actually went up through Mildred Street and over into Old Cloverdale and to downtown. And actually our trolley car system, it was very extensive for a transportation system that was, you talk about the 1920s and the 1930s. And if you know where Washington Park is at, seeing the trolley car map, it actually went way out past Western Hill out into the greater Washington Park area. So we had a very extensive transportation system with the electric trolley car system. And also with the trolley car system too, a lot of us know the Montgomery bus boycott, but we also had a trolley car bus boycott in the early 1920s. So that wasn't the first transportation movement, or the trolley car bus boycott was actually the first transportation boycott movement in the city of Montgomery. Another fact here, when we were doing research in my office, if you read the book I Built the City by Father Harold Purcell, who built St. Jude's Hospital, his book actually said that the first St. Jude Hospital for African Americans was actually on the corner right here at Grady and Hope Street. But I think when we looked on the plat, it's actually on the next street, which is Sutter Street, next to the club right here. Mount Zion Church, which is another one of our projects, was actually the first church, African American church in this part of the city. And the second church in the Peacock Tract was actually, I believe, Bethel Baptist Church was the second church, African American church. And the thing about these churches, they all kind of grew out of the AME Zion, and I know I get this mixed up about the AME Zion and AME whatever, but a lot of these churches grew out of a movement after slavery, where Sojourner Truth and Frederick Douglass, that was their mission to establish the AME Church in the South. And but the other history we looked at, Mount Zion Church was actually the birthplace of the MIA, where Martin Luther King was ordained as the leader of the Montgomery Improvement Association. We look at Mount Zion Church again. They provided assistance to the marchers during the Civil Rights Church. We have Hope Street Baptist Church, which is a block up. It was the church where all of the bus boycott movements or mass meetings at the churches were held. This particular route, let's go through this community, is part of the historic Selma to Montgomery March. You have people like Percy LaVon Julian in the 1920s was the foremost African American scientist in this area, was the first black scientist to attend Indiana universities in the 1920s. You have Tuskegee Airmen that lived in the area. Sherman White, he was a Tuskegee Airman, lived about a block over. You have things that deal with sports, baseball. A lot of the baseball players from the Negro Leagues, when they came to play the Montgomery Gray Sox, actually lived on West Jeff Davis. People like Satchel Paige, Hoop Gibson, they lived in the houses or stayed in the houses on West Jeff Davis when they came here to play the Montgomery Gray Sox. Of course, you had, you look at the Nation of Islam right in that building across the street there. The Nation of Islam had what they call them the Black Muslim, had some influence in the community. Rosa Parks, a couple of blocks away, which was Cleveland Court. I think it's called Rosa Parks apartment now. Her church, Trinity Lutheran, the Grass Partridge, where Reverend Grass's house was bombed. I think during the Civil Rights Movement, also lived in the community. And another area to look at real quick about the economic impact that this community had before the interstate system, and before it was a food desert. You actually had 7 grocery stores that were located throughout the area, so finding and buying food wasn't a problem. You had entrepreneurs in the community like A.G. Gaston, who had an insurance company right across the street, and a funeral home, had an insurance company called Booker T. Washington Insurance. You had numerous funeral homes in the area: Sillis Funeral Home, Welch's, Howard and Howard, E.G. Commons. I think had a Jewish funeral home called Goldstuckers. There were numerous doctors that lived and practiced in the area. You had bakeries, dentist office, cafes, hospitals for blacks were in the area, shoe shops, barbershops, beauty parlors, pharmacies. We even had a theater where you see Club Big Boys. That was known as the Carver Theater, and then it was actually later on in its history turned into a club called Lacos, which if you spell it, flip the words around, the letters around, it spells social. But they flip the words backward to call it the Lacos Club. And you also had this site, which was at one point in its history was a shirt factory, and in my time here, it was called the Carlton McLinder Furniture Factory. And this was the site where all of if anybody had fine Victorian furniture in their homes, this is the site where mostly the whole world bought their Victorian furniture here. And my understanding is that Carson McLinder Factory is still operating in Atlanta, and they do a lot of replication of Victorian furniture for museums all across the country. And one big thing about this factory that a lot of people don't know, there was one individual that worked here that his artwork became very famous and very expensive pieces to buy that worked in this particular factory, and his name was Mose T. And he started out in this factory painting on pieces of wood that he would pick up here in the factory. And I can remember him as a child trying to sell them along the street. And had I known they were going to be popular and expensive as they were now, I would have picked me up by 10 or 15 of them. But that's kind of that's just an overview of so much that has happened in this community. So what happened to this community? How did it look the way that it looked? Well, if you look back to the south and you look to the east, you got the interstate system that has contributed to the destruction of this community. But so this project is designed to bring this community back as best that we possibly can. And starting with the two projects, Mount Zion Church and this project, and future projects that we have on the horizon, like affordable housing, some economic development project. We have some workforce development projects that are coming. So hopefully this will start a rejuvenation of this community and also get this part of the trail connected to downtown. Thank you.